Hi, my name is Lily and I'm an illustrator who specialises in character and concept art, currently freelancing and designing my own projects in my personal time, which has become a real passion for me since graduating. I do intend this channel to be more dedicated to exploring my concept art projects. However, for this first one, I wanted to focus a bit more on what inspired me to become an artist in the first place, which is animation. Animation is my favourite form of storytelling. I love books, comics, and live action and so on, but animation has always captured my interest from a young age. Anything can come to life through this visual art form, and it's always really cool to see how people are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with this medium. I feel that with animation, it's mostly been an outside looking in kind of experience. I was always fascinated with how effortless 2D animated films and TV shows visually looked and flowed, but I never realised how much effort and skill went into designing every single second. So this video will go through one of my own first time experiences making a small animation, which I hope will give me a better understanding of how to bring a drawing to life and maybe inspire others to try out animation. So to begin with, I do some online tutorials which teach me the basics of animation, the bouncing ball and swinging pendulum tutorials, which really help to build my confidence a little. I keep to the basics and try to avoid looking at too many fully finished animations, as I know I wouldn't be on that level as of yet. I also deliberate on what type of animation to do. I almost became a bit too ambitious, thinking about designing a whole animatic style story, but I felt that I needed to keep it small for my first attempt, otherwise I was going to burn myself out and just give up entirely. My more ambitious ideas are still on the list, but might just take a little longer to come to fruition. After some deliberation, I did land on a concept which leaned a little into surrealism after being inspired by some really cool animation transitions. I felt that this was perfect, as being more abstract would probably make it easier for my first time, as I didn't have to worry too much about accurate proportions or movements. For the planning stage, I also filmed a bit of myself with a paintbrush as a reference for the hardest part of the animation, which really helped to structure my character's arm movements. I map out some keyframes on Photoshop, a software that I'm just starting to get used to, which helped me see how the animation would look at certain points and what I needed to animate in between to get from point A to B. This was quite simple, as I mostly just needed to enlarge certain elements like the fish and having the eye open, so nothing that required too much complex movements or angles. Once the rough sketch animation was completed, I started to go in for neater line work, trying to keep it as consistent as possible, although I feel like there were a couple of rough edges. However, I wasn't too worried about this, as I didn't want to be too much of a perfectionist since this was only one of my first attempts at animation. Then went on to some colour, again not worrying too much if the shading, highlights or brush strokes didn't really match up in each frame, and I kind of liked the energetic look that it brought to the animation. And there's not really too much I did after that. I did want this to be quite a simple process for my unexperienced self, and even though this illustration was a simple idea, it was still quite a challenge to get the sense of flow and movement that I wanted. Overall, I feel that I learned a lot from this attempt. For me, the process isn't easy, but it can be so fun and rewarding, and it has given me a better understanding of how animation works and the patience needed to complete every single frame of animation. Anyone thinking of starting animation, my top 3 pieces of advice would be: number 1, look at tutorials and workshops from other animators so that you get a good range of techniques and advice to see which would match you best. Number 2, keep your first animation simple and try to plan it as much as possible. You don't have to, and you can be as ambitious as you like, but from my own perspective, I almost completely overwhelmed myself from being too ambitious with my first animation. And also, I would probably say it's good to do a wider range of shorter animations to get a good understanding of all the basics. Lastly, don't worry if your end result isn't great. And to be honest, there's a lot of stuff I knew I could have done better or would want to change in this animation I just done, but I'm very bad at letting the fear of failure stop me in my tracks, so I know I need to push through even if my end result isn't exactly what I wanted, and I end up learning a lot more than if I never took that step in the first place. So thank you for listening to me talk about one of my first sort of animation experiences. I'm not sure if it's something I will personally keep up with too much, as my art is more geared towards, creating the characters and the worlds that would be intended to be used for animation, but it was still really cool to sort of get an insight into the process, and I think I might potentially try it again in the future. And I hope this little video helps anyone who might think about doing animation themselves. I'd say it's really, really worth giving it a go, seeing what you think about it. And yeah, no, on this channel I'm excited to talk a little bit more about my own personal projects and designs in the future. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So thank you very much for joining.